योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिं श्रीमते अनन्ताय नागराजाय नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्णवागीशयतीश्वराभ्यां सम्प्राप्तचक्राङ्कणभाष्यसारम् श्रीनूत्नरङ्गेन्द्रयतौ समर्पितस्वं श्रीकृष्णमार्यं गुरुवर्यमीढे विरोधे कार्तिके मासे शतताराकृतोदयम् योगाचार्यं कृष्णमार्यं गुरुवर्यमहं भजे। श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। वन्देहं योगदीशिकम्. Today, in the present context, we are taking a look at yoga as a way of isolating self. In this particular context, where people are encouraging us to be within ourselves, within our boundary, it becomes very essential to understand how yoga can play a role in this form of situation, how we can use these practices and philosophy to be within ourselves, at the same time engage with the outside world more meaningfully. So I take this opportunity to present some of the concepts which are relevant and the practices which has to be very reflective. How do we engage with the outside world? The human's tendency is always to be moving outward. We are always drawn outside by various things. Maybe it is some experiences, it may be situation, it may be people, it may be doing something in the outside world. So there is a tendency to be engaged with the outside world. Now, always yoga says that one has to be drawn inward. Yoga is a journey inward. Now, we all know that it is very easy to go outward, but it is very difficult to go in. And it is more difficult to stay in also, both physiologically, geographically, and from mentally and all this, from all this perspective. So in this context of situation where we have to do a lot of reflection, we have to be cautious and we have to engage with the world in a more meaningful, resourceful way, this understanding becomes very, very important. Now, what is this purpose of yoga being inward journey? When we look inward, when we start looking at our own potentials, whatever level at which we are exploring, it helps us to cope with the world much more effectively, cope with others more effectively. Yesterday, most of the time I spent on this issue. When we move inward, we will discover the resources within ourselves. Then when we discover the resources, we understand its potentialities and its strength, and we will be able to engage with the outside world much more meaningfully. Apart from this, the looking inward is a way to keep ourselves healthy and self-stability is established. That is what is the word swastha. Swastha means to be within oneself very, very stable and well established. So this doesn't happen when you look out, you have to look inward. And Krishnamacharya said, yoga is a way to be swatantra. Yoga is a way to be swatantra. Tantra means techniques, swa means within yourself. Look for techniques within yourself so that you are autonomous, you are self-empowered. So in psychology, it is called as field independence. When I say field independence, Field refers to anything that you observe, and independence is ability not to be influenced by that, and at the same time ability to influence that. So that is called field independence. Now I have put a cause word there. Cause is subtle and powerful. So what happens with this inward journey is a cause and effect analysis. So when you move, when you see something and there is a cause behind it, effect is something that you see or perceivable, noticeable, which brings to your, come to your awareness, and that whatever that manifests has something behind it. So that is the cause of it. Now this cause will be always not perceptible. That's why it's called subtle, because it is more powerful and it can influence something. So that is why this inward journey gives us an opportunity to move something what do you call as subdominant or latent within us. What is latent and dormant can become a powerful medium to influence the outside. It's very logical in science, in research. Same logical principle is applied in exploring within ourselves. So with this background, why we are doing this, let us understand yoga is, most popular definition of yoga is to link with something. But yoga is also disengagement. Yoga is to link with something, delinking with something and linking with something. At the same time, you should learn the art of delinking also. That is called disengagement. The popular term, it is called as to be withdrawal, or they may call it as move away from it. This word is not something unusual for yogis or yogic masters, because most of the time in ancient time, we have read in scriptures, we have heard through our masters that a yoga practitioner has to be alone out there. He has to be away from the distractions of everyday life and ordinary life, materialistic life, so that they are able to look inward. And they have also done most of the practices in isolation. So this concept of the present day social isolation is not at all a problem for those people. But in this context, in the present context, this becomes an opportunity to examine why this inward journey is so important. And so if we say, okay, I'm practicing half an hour yoga, 1 hour yoga, do you think that you're delinking? To that point, you're delinking for a minute, few minutes. But even in that process also, your mind may be wandering on 100 different things. So does this really ensure delinking? Or is it? So it is not like that. It is a way of life. The way to disengage is a way of life. So this is in popular term, it is the decision making of to be or not to be. What is it that I should do? What I should not do? What is the way in which I can take some responsibility or not? Or what is it that resources in which inside me which I can dispense or not dispense? Something like that. There are so many dilemmas or so many decisions, so many aspects that comes into our forefront. At that time, we have to use our body, breath, mind, and our higher cortical functions in an efficient way. So this art is what called as yoga of the engagement and disengagement. Now, most important thing, Patanjali's, I did a prayer to Patanjali. Patanjali is author of both the Mahabhashya, the work on treatise on words. He's a author for Ayurveda as well as yoga. Yoga completely deals with mind. We have 3 instruments of engagement at our disposal. One instrument is body, speech, and mind. These are the 3 instruments with which we interact with the outside world. In popular term, it is called Kaya, Vacha, Manasa. Most of the people know this. This 3 instrument, modality of instrument in which we either engage or disengage is with the world or others or within ourselves is very important. These instruments can be utilized, can be appropriately utilized to help us to live in this world much more meaningfully. Now, one of the important instrument which Patanjali talks about is mind. Mind is a central concept in yoga, both from the philosophical point of view as well as the practice point of view. Because the mind is the one which links between the body and the speech. Right now, if I'm talking to you, the talking and the coherence or whatever it is, it's because of the mind which has organized a structured way of delivering something. The same thing is possible because I have the strength to talk to you also. So the mind is the interface between body and mind, and the mind is also interface between me and the outside world. So the way I interact. So it is the mind which is responsible for linking as well as relinking with the outside world. So this mind is very, very essential instrument to link within ourselves also. So that is the central concept of isolating self. When I have to understand myself, I have to understand self from different dimensions. And yoga is a state of mind, or it's an ability. It's really a competency to engage and disengage with the world efficiently. So the popular term for this, yoga karmasu kaushalam, efficiency in action, not inaction, in action. Whatever I do, I have to have that efficiency to deploy my mind, deploy my body, deploy my breath, my prana shakti in an appropriate way. So there is no cost for me. At the same time, there should be a lot of benefit for many people. So the quality and the form of this mind, the mind which is central instrument, the field of that psychic field or whatever you call it as, that should have a certain type of form and characteristic. So this form and characteristic of the mind to a large extent determine the way I react to the outside world and how I take in me the outside world. How do I react to the outside world? How do I take in my world? So there is absolutely, when we say three instruments, there are three layers of self which help you to interact with this world. Layer 1 is your body, layer 2 is your communication, layer 3 is your state of mind. That's why I have identified that in the important aspect of our instrument. Now I go to the practices because that is one of the best way to understand this layer, understand how to handle it, and understand how to reflect on it and identify it and clearly isolate them in your way of engagement and disengagement. So I will take the first set of practices called Bahiranga Sadhana. Why they are called Bahiranga Sadhana? Because they are very concrete practices, observable, where we dynamically use body, breath, and also to a large extent, the right conduct, the right way of living. Now, one of the important discipline in this particular dimension, important practice is the interaction with others and the society. Of course, we use all the three instruments, but when we interact with others and when we try to reflect on it, the whole principles of practices given in yoga, as well as the philosophy behind it, as long as you take less and give more, take less from others, give more to others, and have a host of attitudes which keeps you in a sense of social harmony and social health, you are keeping this particular area safe. That means you have a clear boundary because you are giving more so that everybody is harmonious and there is a sense of equality, a sense of appropriateness, and there is no grabbing and there is no unnecessary harm on others. So this type of interactions are essential, and one has to discover through these practices that part of yourself, how it relates to others. That is one important thing. Then there is another important thing is the personal discipline. How I deal with my own body, my basic needs, the way I relate to some important disciplines of my life, like the way I eat food, the way I share some of my resources, how I connect with something, all these type of practices, personal discipline, which I do within my boundary, that helps a lot in understanding about my own way of functioning. What is it that is the value system that I have and the way of my functioning, which is a little bit a boundary in which you try to function. Now, this is a simple roadmap because in our interaction with the outside world, in our engagement with outside world, ego plays a very important role. Now, these practices helps this ego to come down. It makes the ego interference to come down with in dealing with others, and also ensures the purity of the ego. So, therefore, these practices have to be more reflective, which helps you to look into yourself in relation to others and yourself as a boundary, and yourself should not be so predominant that I am only there, nobody else is there. That should not happen. So ensure whether you are doing that. Now we go to the next layer of myself, which is body. Asana practice is a very practical step where I explore and engage with my own body through certain practices. This is the most perceivable boundary of myself, because everybody has a identity with their own body, and they understand their body, how it is, and to a large extent the practices of asana helps you to make a discovery about your own self as far as body is concerned. So the practices of asana enhances flexibility, stamina, fitness, and general health status. And also it helps you to know a little bit more about how you will react to various situations, especially. So therefore, asana practices are a means for understanding both the strength as well as limitations and the functional aspect of your body. One of my friend who had a very good understanding about the limitations of her own respiratory functions was able to clearly distinguish her own competencies with respect to certain functions in the world. I mean, in her employment or in her dealing with the outside world and dealing with the various situation of life. So this is called as a clarity about my body. Oh, one of the important clarity about the body is its limitation, how much it is limited. So this comes with the practice only. Now, usually body awareness and a discovery of yourself in relation to the body enhances your positive image, and it also enhances your ability to use your physical strength to various aspects of life. So it can be many things. So what happens, most of the practitioners of yoga, we have seen this very strongly across the globe, that most of the practitioners of yoga are very clear about this aspect of practice, and that is why they get so fascinated and attached to asana practice. Well, it's good, they should do it, and at the same time they should not get stuck there. They may terminate their journey, inward journey, only at that point. Suddenly if something happens, then you have to discover something beyond that. So looking healthy and physically functional is assured by asana practice. So this dimension of the self will help you to understand to some extent of the limited potential of your own self. So your one has to go beyond that. This is one of the stop point. You have to move forward. So beyond the body, remember the first thing I told, an effect is there and there is a cause behind it. The cause is more powerful than the effect. More potential is there for the cause. So when you go behind that, there is a component called breath, our vital energy aspect. So this is a very important point of understand. Every practitioner, the one who starts today, somebody who has practiced for nearly so many years, everybody has to start at this point of journey where they, even if they become a little bit aware of their breath, that itself is an important point of inward journey. Awareness of a breath, in breath, out breath. What happens to my breath? What is the quality of my breath? So ability to regulate the breath at different intensities, which we call as techniques of pranayama, ratios in pranayama. These practices shifts one's attention to more deeper physiological functional status. This gives an insight into most of the vital organ functions. So popularly it is called energy fields. So one can become aware and become isolate themselves from the outward identification of the body to a more inward functional aspect of existence. Functional. So that is what gives a lot of confidence to people when they undergo yoga therapy. When they start doing some breathing and movement, they feel that yes, I am confident now. I feel more energetic. I am now able to climb the stairs. Such type of a small instances gives us an insight into the journey the person has made within themselves over to the next area. Now, long-term practitioners of this particular technique will understand clearly the energy potentials of their own self, their hunger, their digestive capacity, their ability to climb Himalayas, their ability to trek, their ability to do 100 different things, what we call as physiological potentials, and also their ability to focus the mind, have the clarity. These are also an outcome of this particular practices. In the same level of practices, yoga also provides another set of practices where the mind starts moving from breath to an inward sensations, and it moves inward to the core areas of body, where or core areas of within oneself, there where they will identify the pockets of sensations, the pockets of their own experiences in terms of lightness, light, and etc., vibrations probably, or to an extent some amount of concentration in those areas, and not outward concentration. It will be concentration within. Such type of practices are called as pratyahara practices, and these practices are more critical because it takes you from more bahiranga to something inward. Very few people can do this type of practices because the distractibility is so high, the mind jumps out, the body jumps out, and the breath goes out of the hand. So this is very important. At this level, the person's level of clarity and mental activity becomes much more task oriented, and they become more physiological healthy, and especially the state of equilibrium will be highest. There will be more because they have already moved inward to a large extent. It's like going, you have a journey of 3,000 miles, and you have already done 1,500 miles of journey. You know, there is only few more miles I have to move. So that is what happens. Now, I have explored something about my body, and I have enjoyed it, and I'm able to experience and explain it. I am able to predict it. This is what is your discovery, the scientific way of your own understanding. Then you go a little bit inward. There is one major area which also is taking a part in all this thing. I can't say that mind is not there in asana practice. It is very much there. But there is something beyond what yoga practitioners have to do. That is mind awareness itself. We call this as antaranga sadhana. We have now crossed a particular checkpost, and we are going beyond that checkpost to an area where the practice of asana and pranayama itself may make a person to become a little bit aware of their own mind, but they don't know what is happening in the mind. However, specific types of practice on focusing the mind and inquiring into the contents of the mind, way it functions, all this component is called antaranga sadhana. It is called dharana, dhyana. I'm not coming to samadhi yet. Now, this process of antaranga sadhana is a journey where the awareness of a self is completely different from what the spiritual people were talking about. I'm not talking about Atma here. No, absolutely no. It is an empirical self, a self which I have construed, which I have constructed. Who is Latha? What is my career? What is my emotions? What is happening to my deeper states of mind? What is it that I'm encountering? Such type of inquiry is beyond I'm not talking about Atma. It helps you to understand your own dynamics within your mind. So that is what is called, you see the self which is created which is created or which is over a period of time conditionally acquired, and you use that self to interact with everybody. Sometimes we don't even know about it. There are so many of unconscious feelings and thoughts will be there, absolutely not aware of it, but we would be acting using that component of this. Most important. Usually people think when they meditate on something higher force. Very good, because that gives you a sense of calmness in the mind, gives you a lot of peace. Fine, that is good. But it is not so easy to think of God so easily unless you have certain practices over a long period of time. So there is a point where this movement of engaging the mind within itself, engaging the mind on various contents of it, can be characterized by certain fantasies, a fabricated experiences. Sometimes it may be a beautiful ego-related trip where I may assume that I am going in the path towards a higher realm of this world and I am absolutely unaffected by anything. So these are also there in the mind. You have to wait and see whether it is yourself or is it something that you are really constructing it, or is it something that gives you a lot of clarity about your own self. So that moments of clarity in this journey is the most important part of your internal practice, Antaranga Sadhana, where the mind becomes the most important instrument for you to inquire about this. I have written the word, I know that I don't know. Very, very important. What is it that you know may be fabricated? What you don't know, maybe you have to explore. So this is, if you know that I know I don't know, is the best way of understanding, because your inquiry won't stop, because you'll say, yes, I have to move forward and I have to look what is it that is causing this emotion, what is it causing this negative thoughts, what is it that makes me to cry when I meditate, what is it makes me to fabricate something which may not be real. So this type of inquiry is when happens when you realize there is something deeper. I have to go beyond that. So most of the time we may terminate here, think that we are just happily aware of my mind, and that is my mind, that is how I behave, that is how I should be. Fine, good, still you will be functioning, still you will be doing, but there may be errors, who knows, it may be there. So you have to keep looking inward and refining it, reflecting, re-examining it. That process of refining, reflecting, re-examining is what is the process of Antaranga Sadhana. Having understood about this Antaranga Sadhana, the most important component of this Antaranga Sadhana is the mind. The mind's function is very, very critical at this point of time in your understanding of yourself, because this helps you to engage with the outside world much more refined way, and also to engage within yourself when you are doing some form of meditation, reflection, probably you are doing some creative work and all those things. This mind becomes a very, very efficient tool. This mind has three important characteristics: sattva, rajas, tamas. I think most of you know what is sattva, rajas, tamas, gunas of the mind. Inherently there, as soon as we are born, it is not acquired. This rajas is very, very important component of the way the mind functions. So typically a rajasic type of personality, we call it as personality in Indian psychology. They are highly distressed type of people when there is no social stimulation, restlessness increases, pacing increases, desire to do something. This do, no, I put it in quotes, is very strong. To look for defects and remember only bad outcomes is very critical tendencies of a rajasic activation. I'm talking about activation, not harmonious activation. Same way, so the mind, when it is characterized by rajas, the tendencies will be more towards this. You cannot even reflect. You cannot even do some clear thinking about what you are supposed to do. Same way, tamas activation is predominant. It results in a lot of lack of clarity, and the errors may be more. Cognitive errors will be likely to occur, and motivation will be low. and the person tends to be lethargic, etc. The mind will be so dull. It is impossible to meditate, impossible to reflect, impossible to do any quick decision when your mind is predominated by tamas. So the earlier practices of the body and the breath and earlier discoveries about your own body and your own breath will help you to understand the dynamics of these rajas and tamas, and helps you to cope with yourself, the mind self, in much more better way. So the above two factors like rajas and tamas are very, very important functional quality of mind. They tend to increase emotionality, agitation, lack of concentration, intense desire to become active, and also high irrational thinking, and also anger. Impulsivity increases when rajas is more. Rajas is more. So impulsively people try to do something. So these characteristics are completely opposite of the cautiousness, clarity, and calmness, which are essential for an inward journey of a yoga practitioner. And it is also essential for our outward journey also, when we are engaging with the outside world also. So cautiousness, clarity, calmness is very, very essential. So I have used the word unmanifest and manifest. Most of this gunas, or what we call as sattva rajas, is not at all seen. You cannot see it. I can see my muscles, I can see my spinal cord, I can even take an x-ray and see what is happening in the stomach also. The functional aspect of the most of the testing can be seen. Gunas cannot be visible to the eyes at all, can only be inferred. And it can be inferred only when they manifest. And when they manifest in an outward behavior, it is observable. Otherwise, it is not observable. So you have to make an effort to understand what is the manifest aspect of myself, which will help you to understand whether you are in a rajasic mode, tamasic mode, or sattva mode. At this point of time, Latha is to myself, to a maximum extent, I am on a rajas mode. Imagine if I were tamas mode, I would not have been able to give this, because I am doing something now and I want to do it in a particular way. So I may be, that helps me to perform. Rajas is important, tamas is important. If there is no tamas, you would not sleep at all. You will become highly hyperactive. So both are, all three are there, inherently is there in the nature, and that is there in our mind also. So one of the important characteristic of our way of understanding ourself is understanding ourself in terms of these gunas. How much it is, what is its intensity, and how it is functioning, and how it is harmful. Having understood this, the important thing is to know how to regulate it. Mind regulation, I call it as. A need is to work on this psychological state, which I told you previously, the rajas and tamasic state. So the emotional state, especially negative emotions like anxiety, fear, depression, negative thing, even if they are for small short-term period, even if it is for a period of 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, no, it may affect our immune functions. That is why across the globe, everybody is trying to say, medical professionals, psychiatrists, and even yoga people say, please keep your mind calm so that your immunity will be there. You need not rush somewhere else. Immunity is the basic vital tejas, virtues, and what we call as something like the potency in an individual for to function and live the life. So therefore one has to work on that. Now how do we reduce this emotional volatility? So basically we know that asana and pranayama reduces the rajas and tamas, but we have to focus on sattva, much needed and desirable quality of the mind. So we are in a state of stress, we have to move towards the strength. Sattva is called as the mental strength of a person. Stress to strength. When you move from rajas to tamas to sattva, you are moving towards the inner strength, the most potential aspect of our life, where we can do much more than what we usually do. What is the potency of this sattva? Sattva is basically enhances your clarity of life, and it increases your efficiency, and it's also called as a quality, what we call as a potency, which takes you beyond the ordinary. It takes you beyond the ordinary. So that is why a self sattva, manas sattva, or type of mind will make yourself much more evolved than others. So how do we do this? How do we do this? So we know that when we do puja, we are very calm, quiet, very popular to many people. So in yoga, building positive resources like bhavanas, Maitri, Karuna, Mudito, Pekshanam, Sukha Dukha, Punya, Vishayanam, Bhavanataha, Chitta Prasadanam. This particular sutra I'm quoting here because these bhavanas are to be, to be in that state of mind, to be in that state of sattva, where you show compassion, friendliness, and tend to show happiness, joyousness with others, prosperity, and other things, realistic optimism, constructive way of coping, all sum total of this, add a lot of this. These bhavanas are more wider. Bhagavad Gita explains that in terms of Daivi Sampat, which is host of some 36 characteristics are there. All these characteristics are nothing but the kaleidoscopic qualities of the mind when it is predominantly sattva. So practices are possible. When you sit and meditative, reflective practices, you can develop these bhavanas. I go to the next important dimension of yoga practice called chanting practice. It is called Swadhyaya. This practice is a most subtle form of practice, deeper like a meditation practice. It is to know the source of, not only your source of your own creativity within you and the creativity in the universe. So that's why mantras are considered to be a very potential tools of crossing that limitations of the body, breath, mind, and go beyond to the world of vibrations and world of creativity. And it is very difficult area. People can chant, but whether they can make an impact of that chanting depends upon their source of their sattva, which makes it possible. So this is the second type of practice. Ritualistic meditation practices or other meditative techniques also helps you to reach to the source of your own identity, whether it is negative, positive, construed, or realized, 100 different aspects. If it is possible, one can reach to that also. Lastly, I want everybody to understand that yoga practices is to connecting to the teacher. Today, for me, the teacher is not physically present, but the teacher is present in the teachings. So when I contact to that teachings and to that teacher, it is possible for me to move beyond the ordinary self, where I identify with the body, I identify with the breath, I identify with the mind, I identify with the content of the mind, and I go beyond the content of the mind and explore something that is beyond that. So this is the way one has to isolate different aspect of your own constituent self and move towards the deeper core of yourself, so that your engagement with the world and disengagement becomes much more meaningful, reflective, contemplative, and also most efficient way of dealing with it. Thank you very much.